Okay, I'm going to get started this morning by just welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see all of you guys here. Welcome to everyone who's joining us online as well. Today is our group learning program where I'm going to be sharing with you guys information about the teachings of the Buddha that are going to help you make your way to enlightenment. We're just restarted this program not long ago, and I'm in the third part of a three-part series where I'm sharing the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is the core central teaching of the Buddha. This is what's going to actually guide you to attaining the enlightened mental state where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. This is the core central teaching that you would need to understand in order to understand anything about the teachings of the Buddha, because everything integrates into it. So what I'm doing here at the beginning of this program is breaking it down into the three sections and really diving in deeply into each section so the students will understand it in detail. First, we're going to start with our meditation, but then afterwards I'm going to teach you about this Eightfold Path, helping you to understand it. So if you'd like to join for the meditation, the way that I start this is with some chanting to ease us into the meditation. I have the chants over there on a laminated sheet on the cabinet. You're welcome to help yourself and get a chanting sheet and even chant along if you'd like. For anybody who's online, you'll find this on our website at buddhadailywisdom.com. You can click on free books and then just scroll down towards the bottom and you'll be able to see the daily chanting sheet there. If you end up getting one of these chanting sheets, they're in the Pali language. This is the historical language of the teachings of the Buddha, that every 2 weeks his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally. This is the way that they remembered his teachings, is to commit them to memory. They would actually recite them orally through chanting. So you can see from the origins of chanting, this isn't a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. So there's nothing mystical or magical here with chanting. Today, we use it in order to ease our mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, they used it just purely as a learning device. If you read the English translations of these chants, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And because of that, I don't think the Buddha actually created these chants himself, because a Buddha wouldn't go around and say, here, chant these things to me out of respect for me. This would be arrogance and ego if somebody did this, and an individual who's gotten to enlightenment wouldn't actually have that arrogance and ego in the mind. So the Buddha wouldn't have gone around and taught people to chant these. So I don't even think these actually came from the Buddha. They probably came from his students. Because if you learn from a teacher how to move from anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings to the peace and the joy that is the enlightened mental state, and this teacher didn't want anything from you or expect anything from you, you might have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for that person too. So that's where I think that these chants actually came from. So you're welcome to join along in the chanting if you like, and just keep in mind that it's not a rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer, or anything like that. It's just helping you to ease into the meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. Once we're in the meditation, you're going to hear me providing guidance to help you during the meditation. It's kind of like instructing you in meditation while we're actually doing it together. Then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet. We're just all meditating together. Everybody here and everyone online, we're just going to be meditating together. But I'm sure you'll probably hear an occasional sound, because you can't be in an environment where it's permanently quiet. If your mind craves permanent quietness during your meditation, when you hear the car go by or a bird chirping or dog barking, maybe someone sneezes or coughs, you'll be annoyed or frustrated. But your mind is actually causing that itself, because your mind is craving permanence, wanting things to be permanent when you live in an impermanent world. You can't be in an environment where it's permanently quiet. So during the meditation, that period of time where it's quiet, you'll hear occasional sounds, and those sounds will arise, they will change, and they will fade away. And you can just reside peaceful and joyful, knowing that this is exactly how the world works. It's just normal that these things occur. After the period of time of quiet where we're meditating, we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting, and then that's where we'll start today's class. In terms of your body positioning for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught. There's seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you can learn these different positions at different times in your journey to enlightenment, and this will kind of help you because you're going to need these different positions at different times. It's kind of like having a tool belt, and you would learn in what situations work best to use these different positions. But oftentimes students are learning in the seated position. So I'll share with you guys some details on the seated position just to help you get started. But you shouldn't take anything that I share as like a hard, fast rule or anything like that. There's no rules or commandments in the teachings of the Buddha. It's about helping you to find the position that's best for you. So in terms of your body position, you can sit however you you like. The things that I share with you are things for you to consider and think about and maybe implement if it helps you or not. And even if you can sit in a position that has nothing to do with what I'm teaching, that's completely fine too. You can just sit however you're comfortable because you're training the mind. You're not training the body. So as long as the body's comfortable, that's all that matters. But if you would like some guidance on that, you can sit on the floor, you can sit in a chair. Maybe if you're at home, you're on a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair, anything like this, you can sit however you're comfortable. A lot of times when people are sitting on the floor, they like to have some cushions under their rear. So if you have some of those, that's kind of nice. And if you're going to bring your legs together in the cross leg position, if you do that just lightly, that's usually best because if they're real tight, it'll impede the circulation and cause pain in the lower body. Sometimes people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets their hips up in the air and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. So you might even find that to be comfortable. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable, you could use it. But remember, it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you find whatever's comfortable for you. And then it's the same thing for anybody who's in a chair or a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair. You can find anything that's comfortable for you too. Sometimes people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me sitting here in a chair with my legs crossed, so that's an option for you as well. And then you can put your hands and arms wherever you're comfortable. It's helpful if the upper body is erect with the sternum up and the shoulders back. This will keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be in the middle with the sternum up and the shoulders back, which will help keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. Because this is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. And you would like the mind to be attentive and alert as you're training it. It also helps you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose by having your sternum up and your shoulders back. So I'm going to ease us into meditation with the chanting, which you guys are welcome to join in on, and then I'll be back in with some guidance afterwards. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Wat Tung Mahakavanhang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Mano Sanam Bhuto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Potang Mahakawanhang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakawata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammono Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here this morning. Welcome to everyone who's joining us online as well. As I was sharing at the beginning, this is our group learning program where I just recently restarted this program, and I'm going slowly but surely through the Eightfold Path. I'm doing a 3-part series where we're diving in deeply to the core central teaching of the Buddha. This Eightfold Path is where you would start learning the teachings of the Buddha to make your way to enlightenment. What enlightenment is where the mind is completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. The mind no longer experiences any discontent feelings. The mind has eliminated all of its anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of this and others are completely eliminated from the mind. And this is accomplished through training of the mind. The teachings of the Buddha aren't about believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. That's not what his teachings are. They're not rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship or rules and commandments. If you've been exposed to those kinds of things associated with the teachings of the Buddha, that's not actually what he taught. When you get in touch with his original teachings, what he's teaching you to do is cultivate wisdom, training your mind, moving your mind away from these discontent feelings, uprooting the causes and conditions that are producing them. The Buddha discovered these 10 individual pollutions that are in the mind. They're referred to as the 10 fetters. And these individual pollutions are what's keeping the mind continuing to experience the anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings. So when you understand his teachings and you apply the techniques that he taught to be able to uproot these out of the mind, you can get to the point where your mind's completely peaceful and completely joyful. Because oftentimes people think that these feelings are actually being caused by somebody else. You might think your mom or dad or your brothers or sisters or your friends or family members are causing you to be angry or annoyed or frustrated. But this isn't actually true. It's actually your own mind that's causing this. If it was other people that were causing you to experience these feelings, you would never be able to eliminate them, because you can't teach 8 billion people in the world to do things your way. So the Buddha figured out how to train his mind to get to this point where it's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy by uprooting these pollutions. And when you uproot these pollutions out of the mind, not only do you eliminate all your discontent feelings, but your mind will be focused and concentrated. You'll have clarity of mind and deep memory, because your mind's going to be performing optimally. You won't have that pollution in your mind any longer. You'll notice that your personal and professional relationships are at ease. They're really blossoming, because you're not being bitter and harsh and hostile in your relationships any longer. As long as you're putting out bitterness and harshness and hostility in your relationships, all that stuff is coming back to you. So the Buddha teaches you how to move your mind away from that stuff and get to the point where you can be completely peaceful and joyful. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't even be in a bad mood any longer. You'll notice that the causes and conditions that produce that are uprooted out of the mind. And where this is coming from is what we're actually going to be talking about today, which is this mental discipline section. You would need to know the wisdom section and the moral conduct section in order to be able to make your way to enlightenment. But today we're going to be focusing in on the mental discipline section. I've already taught these other sections, and it's been recorded, so you're easily able to watch that and listen to it either on our YouTube channel, on our podcast, on our Facebook group. It's in our books. It's in all of our resources, and all the classes that I teach, all the programs and courses and retreats. I teach this Eightfold Path in its entirety. But just as a little bit of a tiny little bit of a recap of what I've already been teaching, because I know that many of you guys weren't necessarily here when I was teaching this, what I did is I walk students through this right view, helping them to understand that the Buddha is pointing to the Four Noble Truths, that he's explaining to you the problem in your mind, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. The problem you're experiencing is that your mind is discontent. Your mind's excited and happy and elated, then it's sad or frustrated or agitated or annoyed. The mind essentially goes up and down, experiencing pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. That's the problem that everyone is experiencing in the unenlightened state. The cause of that problem is craving, desire, attachment. This is the mind's longing, yearning, the wants and expectations. If you get what you want, you get happy or excited. But if you don't get what you want or what you expect, the mind is angry or frustrated. And with the mind craving permanence, while you live in an impermanent world, it's only a matter of time before you don't get what you want. And now if your mind's longing, yearning, and craving that permanence, when you don't get what you want, you'll experience those painful feelings. So the cause of these discontent feelings, where the mind's going up and down, is the mind's craving, desire, attachment, the mind wanting things to be permanent in your life. You can independently verify this for yourself, because that's what the way the teachings of the Buddha work is. You don't believe what I'm teaching you. You don't believe what's up here on the slides. You don't believe what's in the books or anything like this. You need to be able to see the truth for yourself. Look at a recent situation where you've been angry or frustrated or agitated. It might have been this morning or yesterday or last week. What was it that your mind wanted? What were you longing, yearning for? And if you would have got it, you would have been happy. But because your mind didn't get what you wanted, you were angry or frustrated or sad. And then what the mind typically does is blames it on other people, right? The mind firmly believes that these discontent feelings are being caused by something external. And what you might have done, you might have pushed the situation away, or you might have pushed people away in your life, like your friends or family. You might have pushed them out of your life. And you can see that that didn't solve the problem, because if they were the real cause of the problem, when you push them out of your life, you'd be peaceful and joyful for the rest of your life. But when you push those people out of your life, you're not peaceful and joyful for the rest of your life. Or when you're thinking that the problem is external, one of the things you might do is you might be bitter and harsh and hostile with people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal. thinking that you're going to fear this person into doing things your way. It's like, right? Or the third thing you might do when you don't understand the second noble truth is you might put your expectations on people and try to control people and force them to do things your way. In fact, people might be doing this to you. They might be pushing you away, being bitter, harsh, and hostile, and putting their expectations on you. But this isn't going to solve your problem, because this is with a misunderstanding of what the true cause of the problem is. The mind's thinking the problem is external. And if I push away, or I'm bitter, harsh, and hostile, or I put my expectations on someone, it'll solve the problem. The problem is actually inside one's own mind. It's the longing, the yearning, the craving, wanting things to be a certain way. And the Buddha explains the way to eliminate this discontentedness is to eliminate the craving, desire, attachment. If you eliminate the cause, you will eliminate the effect. And then the Eightfold Path is the complete, perfect plan of how to do that. Then I taught right intention. The intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness, where you're training your mind to understand to let go and give up your false beliefs, opinions, and views, eliminate your unwholesomeness. If you're unwilling to practice the intention of renunciation and you're not willing to let go of what your mind's currently thinking about the world, you'll never actually bring in new wisdom to be able to now transform your mind and transform your life. But with the teachings of the Buddha, you're not bringing in new beliefs in order to get rid of your false beliefs. You're bringing in wisdom. And when you bring in wisdom and you see that it conflicts with your beliefs, you're like, whoa, I've been believing all this time that other people are causing me to be angry. I need to eliminate that. I need to practice this intention of renunciation. So you're going to need to let go of certain things that your mind's currently believing, because if you experience anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other feelings, there are certain things about this world that you don't currently understand. And as long as you currently hold on to what it is that you're thinking, you'll never actually experience improvement in your day-to-day life, because you're just holding on to your false beliefs, opinions, and views, and the unwholesomeness. You're going to need to practice the intention of non-ill will or goodwill, where you have a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And you're going to need to practice the intention or the thinking or the thought of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. Because anytime you put out harm, it's just going to come back to you. And again, you can independently verify this. Look at the relationships where you're bitter and harsh and hostile. Those people are probably bitter and harsh and hostile to you right back, because that's what you're putting out. That's what's coming back to you. And you're not going to transform your life and your relationships if you continue to be bitter and harsh and hostile to others. You can't change others. But when you change your own mind and you start functioning more wisely through your moral conduct, now your relationships will improve and your condition of your mind will improve too. So building upon this wisdom section, the Buddha teaches this moral conduct to help you understand this natural law of karma. This natural law of karma is showing you this cause and effect, or this action and result, that what you experience in life is the results of your decisions. Now, some people refer to this as karma. That's a different language, but it's pointing to the same thing. The original teachings of the Buddha in the Pali language, so I use this word karma. If it translated to just one English word, I would use that because it'd be easier for everyone, but it doesn't. The Buddha is teaching you this cause and effect, or this action and result, the results of your decisions. It's your life, your decisions, and your results. And when you're making unwise decisions about your moral conduct, and you're putting out unwise moral conduct, then you're going to experience unwholesome results coming back to you, or unwholesome karma. So if you're bitter, harsh, and hostile with people, that's what's going to come back to you. But conversely, if you can learn to be loving and kind and warm and gentle, and you put that out, and that's always what you're putting out, more and more, that's what's going to come back to you. So the Buddha teaches you the moral conduct of how to do that by understanding the natural law of cause and effect. And the mental discipline that I'm going to teach you today is going to help you put this moral conduct into practice. But just as a brief little recap, he's teaching you to eliminate lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech, because all of these are based in craving, desire, attachment, and it's going to produce unwholesome results for you. You can walk through this and you can see how anytime you've done any of these things, it's produced unwholesome results for you. And then he goes deeper and he explains to speak at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. And I explained what all of these things are, and I gave specific examples of how to practice this and what this is, and showing you how to independently verify it. Because you can see in situations where you haven't talked this way, the conversation didn't go well, because these natural laws that the Buddha is teaching you, it's affecting you whether you're aware of these natural laws or not. Just like the natural law of gravity, it affects you whether you're aware of it or not. And when you gain wisdom of that natural law, you are able to navigate the world more peacefully. And when you lack wisdom of these natural laws about moral conduct that is wise in the world, you will navigate the world without understanding these natural laws, and now you experience unwholesome results. But when you can gain the wisdom of these natural laws and now practice it, you're going to see your relationships really improve. But you're going to need to understand what these are. And I walked students through all of this. And then we talked about right action, ensuring that you're not causing harm through your bodily actions. And the Buddha gives 3 really big ones here, but there's a lot more, right? There's he didn't give you an exhaustive list, right? Because you can understand, if you understand this step, that if you cause harm through your bodily actions, harm's going to come back to you. He doesn't say here, don't walk up to someone and punch them in the face, right? But we know that that's unwise, because that person's probably going to punch us back, or they're going to pull a knife or a gun, or their friends or family are going to attack us. So this particular step is all about not causing harm through your bodily actions. Then the Buddha teaches about your livelihood, getting to a point where you're very enthused and have ambition and motivation in your livelihood. Whatever work you're doing to sustain your life, he's teaching you not to cause harm through your livelihood. Whereas if you're doing any of these things like business and weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness or poisons, this is going to cause harm in the world, and now that harm is going to come back to you. And I gave people examples and showed them how to independently verify this. And then he teaches you how to eliminate scheming, flattering, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain, so that you can get to this point where you're thoroughly enjoying your livelihood and you're very successful at it. So much so that you would do this livelihood even if you didn't get paid for it. Of course, you're going to need to get paid for whatever you do as a livelihood to sustain your life, but you would like to get to a point where you thoroughly enjoy it. Because if you go to a place 8, 10, 12 hours a day and you don't like being there and you don't want to be there and you despise the work that you're doing, you're not going to be able to get to a peaceful and joyful mind and a peaceful and joyful life. So I walk students through all of this, helping them to understand it. And then that brings us to today, where once we understand the wisdom and the moral conduct, which you're going to need to know this thoroughly, now you practice and learn the mental discipline, because that's what's going to help you to implement the moral conduct. You wouldn't be able to implement the moral conduct if you didn't understand the mental discipline. And all of it is built on this wisdom. So I'm going to walk you guys through helping you to understand this mental discipline section, and you can ask questions as we go. I'm going to be pausing a few times, seeing if you guys have any questions. If you would like to ask questions, we have microphones here in the white bowl. All you need to do is get a microphone, press the button. You're going to see the lights come on. You just hold it up to your chin and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And then if you get a microphone, you can just keep it with you, because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question and you can share the microphone. If you could just turn it off when you're not using it, that way we won't get feedback through the speakers, that'd be excellent. And for anybody who's online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. In the comment section, I'll be able to see that and I'll answer your question. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any and all questions that you like. So this next step that we're going to be exploring, which is right effort, this is the words of the Buddha on right effort. So I'm going to read this to you and then I'm going to teach it to you. The Buddha says, "In what, monks, is right effort? Here, monks, a monk rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to prevent the arising of unarisen, evil, unwholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to overcome evil, unwholesome mental states that have arisen. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to produce unarisen, wholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not to let them fade away, to bring them to greater growth, to the full perfection of development. This is called right effort." So he's talking about 4 things here, and I've broken it down here so that you can see what he's talking about, and I'm going to give you some examples so you can see how to apply this in your day-to-day life. He's talking about preventing unwholesome mental states from coming into your mind. He's talking about abandoning unwholesome mental states that already exist in your mind. He's talking about bringing in or producing wholesome mental states that don't currently exist in your mind. And he's talking about maintaining and supporting wholesome mental states that are currently in your mind. So this one here about preventing unwholesome mental states that have not arisen in the mind. Right now, you probably have no interest in killing another human being. It's probably the farthest thing from your mind right now. That's an unwholesome mental state. That's just not currently in your mind. And what the Buddha is saying is apply the effort to prevent that type of thing from ever coming into your mind. And there's other unwholesome things that are not currently in your mind right now. And the Buddha is teaching you to apply the effort to prevent those from ever coming into your mind. Because once they come into your mind, now you have to deal with it. But if you can prevent it from coming into your mind, you've saved your mind and protected your mind. Then he's talking about abandoning unwholesome mental states that have arisen in the mind. There might be certain unwholesome mental states that you currently have in your mind. If you're unenlightened, if you experience anger and sadness and frustration and things like this, you currently have unwholesome mental states in your mind. One of the unwholesome mental states that someone might have is, let's just say they're in an existing relationship and they have a craving for sex outside of their existing relationship, and they see that craving come up in their mind. You could apply right effort, cutting that off and letting that go, realizing that that's an unwholesome quality of mind, and it's only going to cause harm to you and to the people that are in relationships with you. So it would be wise to cut that off and eliminate it, getting it out of the mind. Or say you have anger, frustration, or irritation that's arising in your mind. You can apply right effort to cut that off and let it go. That's going to help protect your mind and get it out of your mind. Then there's certain wholesome mental states that you're going to need to arise in the mind that are not currently in your mind. In order to make your way to enlightenment, you're going to need to bring certain wholesome mental states into your mind. One of those wholesome mental states might be generosity. Let's just say you aren't generous. Let's just say you find it very difficult and challenging to share with other people. Well, what you're going to learn on the path to enlightenment is generosity is part of the path to enlightenment. It's training your mind to live open-handedly, being joyful and sharing with others, because with craving, desire, attachment, that longing, yearning in the mind that's causing your discontent feelings, you'll tend to hold on to things really tight, and the mind will be somewhat selfish, holding on and holding on and holding on. You won't be interested in sharing with other people. Oftentimes when we were growing up as children, we're taught to share, but we don't understand why necessarily. And then as we get older and we start applying effort to accumulate things for ourselves through our own efforts and energy, our blood, sweat, and tears, we tend to hold on to things very tight. We want things to be self-satisfying for ourselves. But in order to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to live open-handedly and share with other people. An enlightened being isn't selfish. And in order to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to train your mind to let go. So the meditation, as you guys are going to hear soon, is helping your mind to let go, but so is generosity. So you're going to need, if you don't have generosity in your mind right now, to apply effort to bring this wholesome quality into your mind so you can practice it and train your mind to let go and not hold on to things so tightly, always wanting things to be self-satisfying. Another example of that might be compassion. Compassion is the concern for the misfortune of others. If you find yourself on one side of this, where you're indifferent and you could care less about other people's suffering and their misfortune, that's one side of it. The other side of it is that the mind is worried and having anxiety. Every time you see somebody in a difficult situation, you might be worried or having anxiety. That's the two opposite sides of the spectrum. The middle way would be compassion, where you have concern for the misfortune of others. So if you see your mind is indifferent and could care less about other people's difficulties and struggles in the world, or if you see that your mind is worried or having anxiety, you're going to need to apply this effort to bring in this compassion, where you have the concern for the misfortune of others. Whether you choose to do something about it or not is a whole nother question, but you're going to need the mental state of compassion in order to be able to produce more and more of the qualities of enlightenment, where the mind can have this concern for the misfortune of others, right? So there's certain wholesome qualities that are not currently in your mind. These are just two examples that might be potentials that you're going to need to apply effort to bring into your mind. Then there's certain wholesome qualities that are currently in your mind that you're going to need to support and encourage, bring them to greater growth, the full perfection of development. So a good example of that is loving kindness. right now you probably have loving kindness in your mind, where you have a genuine interest in seeing other beings be well, but it hasn't been brought to full growth and full perfection and full development. That's why in some situations you're loving and kind, and in other situations you're not. You might be bitter and harsh and hostile to people. That's because your loving kindness hasn't been brought to full growth and full perfection and full development. But it's in there. There is some wholesome quality of loving kindness in there. So you're going to need to apply the effort to bring that up in the mind and practice your loving kindness in more and more situations with everybody around you, where you're not judging somebody to determine whether they deserve your loving kindness or not, but you just practice being loving and kind with the people around you. And then you might have sympathetic joy in your mind right now. What sympathetic joy is where you have joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to it. So this is the opposite of jealousy or envy, right? So right now, you might have sympathetic joy in your mind. If someone was like, hey, I'm thinking about going to Thailand. Maybe you're back in your home country and they're like, hey, I'm thinking about going to Thailand. You might be like, oh, yeah, you're going to really enjoy it in Thailand. They've got great massages. They've got mango and sticky rice. Oh, man, you're going to enjoy that place so much. Congratulations. That's wonderful that you're going, right? You might have sympathetic joy in that situation. But now, say you're at work and you're applying for a promotion, a new position opened up, you apply for a promotion, maybe one of your colleagues or multiple of your colleagues apply for that same position, and maybe they get the job instead of you. And now maybe you're jealous or envious. Maybe they come around and they're like gloating and telling you that they got this new job with more responsibility, bigger title, nicer office, more money, and you didn't get the job. And now maybe you're jealous or envious in that situation. So your mind has sympathetic joy, but it hasn't been brought to full growth and full perfection and full development. So you're going to need to apply the effort to support that, encourage it, and don't allow it to fade away. Bring it to full perfection and development. So where you see your mind is lacking any wholesome qualities, you're going to need to cultivate that in the mind. So this right effort, this is applying the effort to prevent unwholesome qualities from coming into the mind, to apply the effort to eliminate unwholesome qualities that are currently in the mind, to bring into the mind wholesome qualities that aren't yet in the mind, and to support and encourage wholesome qualities that are currently in your mind. And these are just examples that I'm using. What's wholesome or unwholesome in your mind is unique to you. And this is where the next step comes in. When we get to the next step, I'm going to explain to you what that one is, because that one's going to work with this one. You wouldn't actually be able to apply this one without the next one. But let me just pause here and see if you guys have any questions on right effort. Any questions here about this particular factor? Let me check online here, see if we have any questions. Okay. Let's see, Sammy, Zoom should be working. You're welcome to log in if you like. There's someone in Facebook that was saying Zoom's not working, but we have Zoom up and running. You're welcome to log in if you like. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. Okay, so now let's go to right mindfulness. Again, I'm going to read it to you and then I'll teach it to you. The Buddha says, in what, monks, is right mindfulness? Here, monks, a monk resides reflecting on body as body, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on feelings as feelings, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mind as mind, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mental objects as mental objects, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. So again, he's giving you four things. He's talking about body as body, feelings as feelings, mind as mind, and mental objects as mental objects. What he's referring to here is something called the four foundations of mindfulness. I'm going to teach you what that is, but first, let's just talk about mindfulness in general. Mindfulness in general is awareness of mind, where you need to have awareness of what's going on in your mind. That's how you're going to be able to apply right effort. You wouldn't be able to eliminate the unwholesome qualities from your mind and cultivate the wholesome qualities if you didn't have right mindfulness. You need to have awareness of what's going on in your own mind. Because sometimes in the unenlightened state, we walk through the world not really realizing what's going on within your own mind. So you're going to need to cultivate this awareness of mind. That's what mindfulness means. Now, in some situations, people are using this word mindfulness in ways that the Buddha didn't necessarily use it, because this word mindfulness has made its way into modern vocabulary. You might hear somebody say, can you mindfully carry this glass of water to that table? And what they're really saying is careful. They're just replacing the word careful with mindful, right? Can you mindfully carry this glass of water to the table? Well, they're just saying, can you carefully carry this glass of water to the table? And that's not what the Buddha is teaching. That's not what he's guiding you to understand. He's guiding you to have this awareness of mind. And for some people, you might just start out there and you might hang out there for a few months, just building this general awareness of the mind. Because if you were like me, as I was going through life, I was just kind of plowing through the world, knocking down trees, burning up the forest. I looked back and I saw all the trees knocked down. I was like, who knocked down all the trees? Where'd all that smoke come from? That smells kind of strange. Where's all that smoke coming from? Well, it was me that was doing all of that. I wasn't aware of what was going on in my own mind. I wasn't aware of the decisions that I was making because I had this lack of wisdom of these natural laws. So you're going to need to cultivate this awareness of your mind and what you're thinking, what your thoughts are, your ideas, your mental states. Are they wholesome or unwholesome? This is something you're going to need to cultivate. And the next step that I'm going to teach you is going to help you to cultivate mindfulness. You wouldn't be able to have mindfulness without the next step. But let's describe this one first. So you're going to need this awareness of mind. But then more specifically, you're going to need to develop the 4 foundations of mindfulness. What this is where you're aware of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and something called mental objects. I'll explain to you guys what this is. Having awareness of the bodily sensations is to be aware of the bodily sensations that are occurring prior to you experiencing a discontent feeling. The discontent feelings, prior to the mind experiencing the feeling, there's an early warning system alerting you that you're about to get angry or frustrated, for example, or you're about to get happy or excited or elated. All of these feelings, whether they're pleasant, painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, they produce some bodily sensation that you may or may not even be aware of right now. With something like anger, it might be like tingling in the body, tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, heat in the face, pressure in the skull. These are all bodily sensations associated with this anger arising. This is an early warning system alerting you that you're about to get angry, you're about to get frustrated. And this is very important because if you can be aware of this, you can actually apply right effort to cut it off and let it go. You're not suppressing your feeling. You're actually cutting it off and letting it go before it becomes a feeling. And now you've just protected the mind. If you allow the mind to become angry or frustrated or sad or lonely or bored or any of these other feelings, now your mind's staying wired that way. It's kind of like if you were to take a boat from Australia to Indonesia, you would like to prevent the water from ever coming into the boat. Because when you're out in the middle of the ocean and this water comes flooding into the boat, you've got a real problem to deal with. So if you allow the anger to come flooding into the mind, you've got a real problem to deal with now. But if you can prevent it from ever coming into the mind by cutting it off as a bodily sensation, that early warning system, you will have protected your mind. You will have preserved your mind and protected your mind from a whole lot of issues. But because your mind is in the process of being trained and you're not yet fully trained, you are going to miss it sometimes as a bodily sensation. It's going to become a feeling. And now your mind's angry or sad or frustrated, or you might be happy or excited or elated, or you might be bored or lonely or shy or embarrassed or disappointed or some of these other feelings. Well, if you're noticing that with your mindfulness and your awareness of mind that you're now having this conditioned feeling, the Buddha teaches you to cut that off and let it go, because that's what's going to help train your mind to be restrained. Even the conditioned pleasant feelings, that sounds kind of counterintuitive to some people. You can probably understand cutting off anger and sadness and frustration pretty easily, but you even need to cut off the happiness and excitement and elation. But these are what's called conditioned feelings, that you can only experience happiness based on some condition. That if you can be happy when it's sunny outside, that means your happiness is based on the sun. So that means when it's raining, you'll be sad or frustrated or agitated. Or if you get happy when your bank account balance is up here, you'll be sad and frustrated when it goes down here. So as long as you allow your mind to get the conditioned pleasant feeling, you're going to experience the painful one as well. So if you get so happy or excited when you get that brand new job, that new money, that new title, well, when the company goes out of business 3 years from now, or maybe they lay you off after 5 years, or you get fired, you'll be angry or sad or frustrated because you allowed the mind to get the happy feeling, excited when you got what you wanted. That means when you don't have that anymore, you're going to feel sad or frustrated or angry. And whatever you're getting happy about is impermanent. The sun is impermanent. Your bank account is impermanent. Your job is impermanent. Your relationships are impermanent. So if you allow the mind to get conditional pleasant feelings, conditional happiness, the painful feelings are waiting for you right around the corner. This is the reason why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness and permanent joy. That's what the enlightened mental state is, where you can experience unconditioned joy or unconditioned happiness, where the mind can just always be happy. But if you keep allowing your mind to experience conditional happiness, that means the mind's going to stay wired that way. If I get what I want, I'm going to be happy. But if I don't get what I want, I'm going to be sad and frustrated. The mind's going to keep doing that. So you need to be able to cut off and let go at the bodily sensations, whether it's a conditioned pleasant feeling, painful feeling, or neither painful nor pleasant. You need to be able to see the pleasant feelings as just as much a part of the problem. Because again, if you allow your mind to get those pleasant feelings, then when that thing doesn't exist anymore that you're getting so happy about, when it changes, you will be sad or frustrated or agitated or annoyed or some other painful feeling. So you need to cut off the conditional pleasant feelings, being willing to let go of that temporary pleasantness in order to get to the permanent joy, the permanent happiness, right? So cutting off and letting go at the bodily sensations. For anger, that all sounds pretty intuitive, right? The tingling in the body, the tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, the heat in the face, the pressure in the skull. But those pleasant feelings have bodily sensations too. It might be tingling across the shoulders, up the back of the neck, over the head, right? People call this warm fuzzies in some cultures. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that term, warm fuzzies, right? So you're going to need to cut off at the bodily sensations because the mind's essentially alerting you as an early warning system with these bodily sensations. It's basically saying, I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling here. And you say, nope, that's your right effort. Nope, I'm not going to let you do that. You're not going to get that feeling. And now the mind can let that go, right? But again, if you don't cut it off as a bodily sensation, cut it off as a feeling. So now the mind is experiencing a conditioned feeling. You missed it. Cut it off there. That's the next best option. Because if you don't cut it off there, it's then going to affect the condition of your mind. Have you ever been angry or irritable or grumpy for like a few hours or a few days or maybe like a week or two? Of course you have, right? We all have at some point, right? That's because you didn't understand this. You didn't cut it off at the bodily sensations. You didn't cut it off at the feelings. And now for maybe a week or two, you're kind of grumpy and irritable, frustrated. And that's no fun, right? So you need to be aware of the condition of your mind. If you're noticing for a few hours or a few days, hold on a second. What am I doing here? Stop being grumpy. Stop being irritable. Your mind is causing that itself. There's something you want that you're not getting, and now the mind's grumpy or irritable about that, right? So just cut that off and let it go, and slowly but surely you can transform the mind. And then there's these mental objects that you need to be aware of. What a mental object is a deeply rooted container in the mind. These are the pollutions that the Buddha discovered, the 10 fetters. You're going to need to know what these are, the symptoms of them, how to eliminate them, and how to know that you actually have eliminated them. I'm going to be teaching this in August. There's a retreat that I teach each August where I spend about an hour to an hour and a half on each individual fetter, helping you understand what it is, the symptoms, how to eliminate it, and how to know that you've actually eliminated it. Because when you see those fetters arising, these mental objects, you need to be aware of the symptoms and train your mind to let it go. I'll give you an example of maybe one or two of them. When we were born, we didn't have ill will in our mind. We didn't go into the nursery at the hospital hating other babies, right? We didn't go into the nursery with conceit, right? We didn't go into the nursery like, my crib's better than your crib. My gloves and mittens and my hat are better than your mittens and your hat, right? We didn't think that way when we were a little baby. We just came into the world. Our mind was quite pure. We did have some pollution in our mind, but it was fairly pure at that point. But over time, we experienced craving, longing, yearning. We said to our mom and dad, hey, can you get me chocolate and ice cream, mommy and daddy? Mommy and daddy, I want chocolate and ice cream. And they're like, sure, here you go, little David. You can have your chocolate and ice cream. Ah, thank you, mommy and daddy. You're the best mommy and daddy ever, right? And then I asked for it again, and they're like, yeah, sure, here you go. Have your chocolate and ice cream. And I'm licking my chocolate and ice cream. It tastes so good, right? But then at some point, mom and dad said, no, you can't have chocolate and ice cream. You're the meanest mommy and daddy ever. I don't like you, right? And now that mind thinks that mom and dad are the problem, where in reality, it's your own mind that's causing this. It's the craving for permanence. The mind's wanting that chocolate and ice cream to be permanent. And there was bodily sensations that occurred, but we were too young. We didn't know about those. We didn't have that wisdom. Our mind then experienced the feeling of anger and frustration. Then it affected the condition of our mind. For a few hours or however long, a few days, we were grumpy and irritable. And then we formed a mental object where our mind started to get this deeply rooted container of ill will. And now what the Buddha is teaching you to do is put a blockade at the bodily sensations. Cut off and let go. Don't allow your mind to keep staying wired this way. But you're going to also need to break up those mental objects and get them out of the mind. It's almost like using a jackhammer. And he gives you various tools and techniques to be able to do that. In the example of ill will, it's loving kindness meditation and practicing loving kindness. So you're going to need to put a blockade at the bodily sensations, cutting off and letting go, preserving and protecting your mind. You're not repressing your feelings or suppressing them. You're cutting them off and letting them go before it becomes a feeling. And then all the while, when you're cutting off and letting go at the bodily sensations, you're working to purify the mind and getting rid of those mental objects out of the mind. So this is the right mindfulness, the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And now you apply right effort whenever you see unwholesome qualities to get those out of the mind or prevent them from coming into the mind. And then you apply right effort to bring in the wholesome and support and encourage the wholesome. Now, the way this looks practically in day-to-day life is, let's just say I'm sitting on the sofa and I'm watching the news. Right? And now when I'm watching the news, the mind sees something through the eyes and hears something through the ears that it finds to be disagreeable. Maybe something horrible in the world is going on. And that's triggering your craving, where you crave for the entire world to be peaceful. And you want the world to be peaceful permanently. Now, that's a great aspiration, but when you're craving and longing and yearning for it, craving for everything in the world, everyone to be permanently peaceful, now when you see something opposite of that, you start to get frustrated or agitated or annoyed. The way that's going to happen is as you're watching the news through your eyes and through your ears, now you're going to notice the bodily sensation starting to arise where you know that you're about to get frustrated or agitated. So rather than allow the mind to dwell in that and stay wired that way, what the Buddha is teaching you to do with right mindfulness and right effort is to turn off the news, or get up and go for a walk, or go for a bike ride, go to the bathroom and just wash your hand, go get a drink of water in the kitchen or something like that. That would be redirecting your mind and taking it in the opposite direction, rather than just sitting there on the sofa, continuing to watch the news, continuing to allow your mind to stay wired with this anger and frustration. So when you're noticing the bodily sensations coming up, you're going to need to redirect the mind and take it in a different direction. And that's applying right mindfulness to be aware of these unwholesome qualities, and then apply right effort to cut that off and let it go. Right? And you're going to need to do the same thing with wholesome qualities too, where you see wholesome qualities in the mind with your mindfulness, apply the right effort to support them and encourage them, not allowing them to fade away. So do you guys have any questions on right mindfulness and the 4 foundations of mindfulness? Remember, if you guys could use the mics or online, if you guys could put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, that would be great. No questions? Okay. All right. So now we'll move on to the last factor of the Eightfold Path. This is what's going to help you to develop your mindfulness. The Buddha teaches right concentration. Here, he's describing something called the jhanas. I'm not going to read this to you because what he's explaining to you is enhanced qualities of mind. There's these enhanced qualities that you will experience as your mind is putting together all the pieces of the Eightfold Path. You will start experiencing these 4 phases that the mind goes through. They're preliminary phases where you're experiencing enhanced qualities. And there's certain courses and retreats that I teach where I help you to understand what this is. But in this particular program, the group learning program, you don't need to know what the jhanas are at this particular point because you're just trying to learn the Eightfold Path and put it into practice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you what is right concentration and how to actually develop it in the mind, because there's other parts of the teachings of the Buddha where he teaches how to practice right concentration. Here in the Eightfold Path, he's just explaining the results of having put together the Eightfold Path. And it's kind of like the light bulb is flickering and you're getting these enhanced qualities of mind, indicating to you that you've put together the Eightfold Path really well. And when you experience that, you start pivoting your practice and you start focusing on other things. But what you guys will need at this point in time is how do you practice right concentration? What is it and how do you practice it? This is the results of it. Okay. So the way you practice right concentration and what this is to develop a meditation practice where you're meditating daily and to practice something called singleness of mind in your daily life. You're going to need meditation in order to develop right concentration and to develop all these other qualities that the Buddha is teaching you. Breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation are the 2 primary forms of meditation that you're going to need. That's why in all of the programs, I start with breathing mindfulness first, and then I help you to develop loving kindness meditation. These are specific meditations that are helping to resolve and eliminate certain unwholesome qualities and helped you to cultivate certain wholesome qualities in your mind. So the breathing mindfulness meditation that we did this morning, where we are focused on the breath and the mind moves off the breath and you cut off and let go and bring your mind back to the breath, that's helping you to develop right concentration. Because when you're focused on the breath, you're developing and exercising your mind, almost like taking it to the gym and exercising the mind to have this concentration. And now when the mind moves off the breath, that's your mindfulness because you notice it. You're like, whoa, my mind just moved off the breath. Now, when you cut that off and let it go and bring your mind back to the breath, that's helping you eliminate craving, desire, attachment, training your mind to let go. Because that's what the unenlightened mind doesn't know how to do. It doesn't know how to let go. If you think back to that boyfriend or girlfriend that you got together with, when you guys broke up, you maybe missed this person. You were lonely or bored, or you were angry or frustrated for a period of time because your mind was holding on, right? Your mind couldn't let go. You didn't understand this relationship is impermanent. They're not going to be in your life permanently. So when your mind was holding on and holding on and holding on, you were angry and frustrated or sad or lonely or bored or missing this person. But at some point, your mind let go. You were like, you know what? If he wants to be with someone else, so be it. And you let go. Or if she wants to move to another part of the world, so be it. And you let go. And that's when your mind regained its peace and it regained its joy, right? But your mind doesn't know how to let go in the unenlightened state because it hasn't been trained to do so. So the goal of this breathing mindfulness meditation isn't to eliminate your thoughts. You're always going to have thoughts. Even when you're enlightened, you're going to be meditating and you'll have a thought. But the difference is in the enlightened mental state, you're going to notice it right away. You're going to cut it off and let it go. And then there's going to be this stillness and quietness in between your thoughts. What you might be experiencing right now is a bombardment of thoughts, lots and lots and lots and lots of thoughts. Or you might have had a thought, you might have followed it for a while, played with it, looked at it, thought about it, and then you're like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm meditating. Let me bring my mind back to the breath, right? So this is what the unenlightened mind does because it doesn't know how to let go. So this breathing mindfulness meditation is like taking your mind to the gym and exercising it so that you can get better and better at letting go. So that now in your day-to-day life, with your mindfulness, when you're noticing the unwholesome quality of anger arising, you can let go. But if you haven't trained your mind like that regularly with meditation, you can't do that. So in meditation, you're cutting off anything and everything that comes up because you're exercising your mind and you're training your mind. But in your day-to-day life, you're only cutting off and letting go of the unwholesome qualities. It's kind of like a professional athlete. If I was a pole vaulter, my exercise program would look very different than my sport. I might do cardiovascular training, weight training, agility training, right? But my sport looks very different than what I'm doing in the gym. So the same thing is true with your meditation. You're cutting off anything and everything, whether it's wholesome or unwholesome. In your meditation, you're cutting off everything because you're training your mind to let go. But in your day-to-day life, you're only cutting off the unwholesome thoughts, right? If you're thinking about taking your mom out to lunch or out to dinner, hey, no problem with that. That's wholesome. Call her up. Hey, Mom, you'd like to go out to dinner? I'd like to take you out to dinner. But if you're at work and you're thinking about punching your boss in the face, cut that off and let it go, right? Because that's going to produce unwholesome results for you, unwholesome karma, right? So you would like to cut off and let go of the unwholesome things that you're experiencing in day-to-day life. So the breathing mindfulness meditation is going to help you to do that, along with the generosity. The loving kindness meditation is going to help you to cultivate love and kindness in your mind, where you have a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. This is the opposite of anger, hatred, the bitterness, the harshness, the hostility. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't even have the slightest dislike towards another being. Right now, you might have people that you like, and you might have people that you dislike. That dislike is coming from your own mind. Oftentimes people think it's coming from the other person. But what it is your mind has certain expectations. You want everybody to be a certain way. And when they meet those criteria, you like them. But when they don't meet what you expect, when they're not meeting your expectations, you dislike them. So when you understand the universal truth of impermanence, you can understand everybody's different. You can get to the point where you like everybody, where you love everybody. You have a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, right? This is what you would ultimately like to cultivate, this active goodwill towards all beings. So this loving kindness meditation is a completely different style than what we did this morning. And it's going to rewire your mind to be loving and kind so that now you can go out into the world through your intention, speech, and actions, which what the Buddha taught you earlier in the Eightfold Path, to be loving and kind with all people around you. And this is where your life's going to really change. Because right now, if you have even the slightest bit of resentment or hostility in any of your relationships, that's affecting you. You're having difficulties and struggles in those relationships. But if you can fill up your gas tank with this loving kindness by doing loving kindness meditation, then you can go out into the world and be loving and kind. Slowly but surely, your relationships will change. You know, I was very bitter and harsh with my mom growing up because I had a lot of expectations for her of how she should have functioned as my mother. And she didn't do those things. And I was very angry about that, right? Because I wanted her to be a certain way. And I was causing my mind to be angry because she wasn't that way. And I kept trying to change mom all throughout our relationship. And she wouldn't change, right? So then I got wise to the teachings of the Buddha and I started training my own mind. And as I trained my own mind and I became loving and kind and warm and gentle, she started to change too, right? As long as I kept wanting to change her first and I was unwilling to change, nothing changed. Because this is how we typically approach our relationships in the unenlightened state, is we try to change the other people, right? Because we're perfect, right? Everybody's perfect, right? No, you're not perfect, right? Your mind has certain difficulties and challenges. You need to cultivate wisdom of how to be more perfect, right? So if you just want to change other people, it will never transform your life and your relationships. You need to actually work on your own mind. And as you work on your own mind, and now you become loving and kind in your relationships through your intention, speech, and actions, the other people will gradually start to change perhaps, right? And that's what's going to create real transformation in your mind, in your life. So this loving kindness meditation is going to help you to transform the anger, hatred, and ill will and all those lesser versions, even the slightest dislike, into love and kindness. It also helps transform your mind that if you have this inner dialogue where you're degrading and diminishing to yourself and you're talking in negative ways to yourself, this is going to help you get rid of that too. Because oftentimes that's what we do in the unenlightened state. We have judgment towards others, but you might be judging yourself and putting expectations on yourself and talking in unkind ways to yourself. So if you have this inner dialogue where you're beating yourself up all the time, this meditation is going to help you with that too. So a meditation practice, you would like to get to 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes or more. And you're going to need to gradually build up to that. It can take you 6 months, a year, even 2 years to build up to that. But there's probably unbeneficial things right now that you're doing that if you take that out of your life, you'll have a lot more time in your life. Because, 2 to 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes or more can sound like a lot to some people. But if you look at your life, there's probably certain things you're doing that are unbeneficial that you can trim out of your life, and it's going to give you more time to do beneficial things like meditation. Now, if you're watching YouTube videos for 4, 5, 6 hours a day, or you're scrolling social media for that amount of time, you can cut that back, maybe 30 minutes or an hour a day, and now you have a lot more time to do other things in your day-to-day life, right? So this meditation practice is something you're going to need to work at, and I help students to do that as they progress through these various programs and courses and retreats. Then you're going to need to develop what's called singleness of mind, where you're just doing one thing at a time. If you've been taught to multitask, your mind actually can't do that, where you're doing more than one thing at a time. Sometimes people think that they're actually multitasking, but what you're actually doing is you're doing one thing for 3 to 5 seconds, and then you're rapidly cycling to another. And then you're doing that for 8 seconds, 10 seconds, and you're rapidly cycling to another. So your mind's not doing all 3 of these things. You're actually just rapidly cycling. So if I was talking to my mom, watching TV, and eating a sandwich, I'm not actually doing all 3 of these things. The mind's actually just talking to mom for 3, 4, 5 seconds, watching TV for 3, 4, 5 seconds, taking a bite of the sandwich for 3, 4, 5 seconds. And if you do this with your mind, it's kind of like a racehorse running around a racetrack. And when you get to the end of your day, you might find that you're quite stressful, or you have anxiety, you can't calm down, you can't relax, because that's what a racehorse experiences. When it runs around the racetrack, when it goes to the barn, it can't calm down because it's been used to running around the racetrack so much. So if that's what you're doing with your mind for 6, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, you're running around the racetrack, when you get home, you'll find that it's very challenging to relax. So there is a better way of life here, where you can just do one thing at a time, practicing singleness of mind. And that's what the Buddha taught you, that whenever you notice your mind wandering, that you apply right effort to cut that off and let it go. This is where your mindfulness and right effort comes in. Because if you were washing dishes and your mind was thinking about something else, you could very easily cut yourself with a knife. Or say you're in a business meeting and the boss is over there talking and your mind's thinking about Thailand. And you're like, man, I can't wait to get to Thailand. Man, when is this meeting going to be over, right? You need to cut that off and let it go and be like, man, let me just focus on the meeting, right? Just do what you're doing at that particular moment. Because what we do when we're talking to mom, watching TV and eating a sandwich is we think we're being more productive. But in reality, you're really not. Because this conversation that could have been 10 or 15 minutes, it lasted 30 minutes or an hour. And now you wasted your time. And now you didn't really benefit from the TV program, and maybe you have a stomach ache at the end of eating this sandwich. Maybe you were even harsh and bitter and hostile to mom, and now you got to call her up and apologize, tell her you're sorry, or maybe you agreed to certain things, and you're like, yeah, mom, I'll take care of that. I'll do that. And then when you get off the phone, you completely forgot. And you're like, mom, what was that I was supposed to do again? I'm so sorry, right? You have to call her back up, check in with her. So you're actually spending more time. You're wasting your time. But the mind's lack of wisdom and delusion is it thinks that it's actually doing something productive. And where this comes from is the 1960s. In the 1960s, computers came out, and computers can multitask. And all of a sudden, human beings were like, hey, we can multitask. We can do it too, right? No, the human mind can't multitask. A computer chip can, but a human mind cannot. You can only do one thing at a time. So it will be wise for you to just do one thing at a time. And more, your mind will be trained to be able to do this, and it'll just stay focused and concentrated all the time. The way that you can think about this is that if you had a piece of wood and you had a steel rod and you were grinding that back and forth, initially the steel rod's going to bounce around a lot because there's no groove there. So that might be what your mind's doing right now. It might be bouncing around a whole lot. But if you grind that steel rod back and forth enough, you're going to get a nice little groove going. And when this steel rod pops out, you're going to know it, and you'll be able to bring it right back, and you'll keep going with that groove. And then eventually you'll get a deep enough groove that it'll never pop out because it's a deep enough groove. So your mind's the same way as if you practice singleness of mind enough, eventually your mind will never pop out because it's just so focused and so concentrated. So you're going to need to be able to practice the meditation and practice singleness of mind in day-to-day life in order to hone the mind and get it to stay in the middle where it's focused and concentrated, and then it'll just stay that way all the time. Do you guys have any questions on this step, right concentration, or any of the steps, or how to apply them in your day-to-day life? Steve? Yep.
Thank you, David. So on the right mindfulness, if I'm understanding, so if I fail to cut things off and it develops as a mental object, say of anger or a craving for this or that, the chances are that's going to manifest itself in an action, right? Is there also a step of being mindful of our actual actions? Because I'm suddenly yelling at someone. I might have the intention of not drinking alcohol, and suddenly I've got a beer in my hand. Wow, where'd that come from?
Yeah.
And also, once you're in the action, do you apply the same thing of if you only become aware of this thing in the action that I'm screaming at someone, or do you do the same thing? Just cut it off as soon as you can.
Yes, exactly. So this is the reason why the unwholesome qualities are so detrimental to you, because if you allow the mind to experience the unwholesome mental state of anger, for example, then it can start coming out through your intention, speech, and actions. And now you're creating lots of unwholesome gamma or unwholesome results. You're damaging your relationships. And now this is going to come back to you. So that's why the Buddha is teaching you to cut it off at the source, which is the mind. So if you can be observant of the mind and you can cut it off and let it go, don't allow your mind to experience it, then over time, eventually you won't have any anger. By the time you get to enlightenment, there's no anger arising. It just doesn't even arise. But in the process of getting there, you're going to need to be observant of the mind and cut it off and let it go sooner and sooner, preferably as a bodily sensation. Because once it becomes a feeling in the mind, then you might act upon it. And let's just say that's where you are in your practice, that you're now acting upon this anger and you're noticing that you're starting to be bitter, harsh, and hostile in your speech. At whatever point you can cut it off, cut it off. So the Buddha teaches you that before you do an action, whether it's a bodily action, a verbal action, or what have you, that you should reflect on this particular action. Is it going to cause harm to others? Is it going to cause harm to me? Or is it going to cause harm to both? And if it causes harm, he says you should refrain from doing that. So that's part of your mindfulness, is reflecting on your actions before you take them. He says while you're doing an action, if you notice that it's causing harm to others, causing harm to yourself, or causing harm to both, you should stop doing that thing. And he says, after you do an action, he said you should reflect on it and see, did it cause harm to others? Did it cause harm to me? Or did it cause harm to both? And if so, don't repeat that action ever again in the future. And that's where your discipline comes in. You need to have the discipline to be able to do that. And the way this might look is if, like, say someone's used to being bitter and harsh and hostile with their life partner, their children, their family or friends, you might notice that you're 3/4 of your way into your sentence where you're like verbally attacking this person and you realize, oh my goodness, I shouldn't be doing this. And you cut it off and 3/4 of the way in, and you're just like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, I apologize, right? And now the next time, maybe you cut it off halfway. The next time, maybe 1/4 of the way. The next time, maybe it's on the tip of your tongue and you're getting ready to say it and you're like, no, I'm not going to say that thing because it keeps causing all these unwholesome results. Now you cut it back even further, where now it's just a bodily sensation or a thought in your mind, and you cut that off and let it go. And eventually you get to the point where it doesn't even arise. You don't even have the thought of being bitter and harsh and hostile to someone. So the way you might think about it is like a wild bush growing, and you're cutting it back and cutting it back and cutting it back and cutting it back and cutting it back. And eventually you uproot it out of the ground, and then it never grows back. It never comes back. So this is the way you're going to need to do it, is you're going to need to catch it sooner and sooner and sooner, realizing you will make mistakes. Nobody's going to go out of here and practice this perfectly today, because it's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. So you cut it off at your soonest ability to do so. And then just aim to do better and better each time, realizing it's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions you guys have? No? Okay. Usually Steve breaks the ice. He gets all the questions. Here's Arvind on Facebook or on Zoom. Go ahead, Arvind.
Hi, teacher David. Good day to you. I just have a question with regards to singleness of mind. Does this mean, like, for example, if I'm driving a car, I don't switch on the music? Because usually, like, when I'm doing certain things, I sometimes listen to music, or I kind of have that kind of background things just to make it, a bit more pleasant, whatever I'm doing. Now, when I'm practicing singleness of mind, does this mean that I'll have to do away with the music? That's the first question.
Yeah, that would be wise while your mind is under training. You're going to need to probably go a good 6 months to a year, maybe even longer, where you're not listening to anything while you're driving. Because oftentimes what people are experiencing is they're bored when they're driving or they're lonely and they play some music and they think that's solving the problem, but it's actually not solving the problem, because what's going on is your mind is having a craving for stimulation. And as long as you keep giving it the music, you haven't actually solved the root problem, which is the craving. So if you get rid of the music for a good 6 months, year, 2 years even, then you can learn how to already, you enjoy listening to the music, but you can also learn how to drive and enjoy just being in silence too. And as you do that, not only are you training your mind to eliminate the underlying craving, desire, attachment, and get to the peace and joy, but you're focusing the mind and getting more concentration at this time too. Eventually, you can get to the point where after you've gone through all the training, there's no harm in playing a little bit of music while you're driving, but you've already done all the training. Your mind's been completely transformed. You got high degrees of concentration. There's no craving for the music. You can be just as peaceful and joyful driving with the music or without the music, but you're going to need to go 6 months, a year, even 2 years without this music. The Buddha refers to this as distancing yourself from the object. And you're going to need to do this with each individual potential craving that your mind has, where you distance yourself from the object for a period of time, train your mind to let it go. And then in some cases, you can bring that thing back. And music is a good example of that, because there's no harm in listening to the music. But if you haven't cultivated the concentration and your mind is having craving, now your mind isn't able to let it go. So you're going to need to distance your mind for a period of time to train the mind to let go and cultivate that concentration.
Thank you, Teacher David. The second thing I just wanted some advice on is the phone. I've noticed that I'm subconsciously just being dragged into looking at my phone a lot and checking social media or news, and it's something that has got a real stranglehold on me. Do you have any advice on how to kind of get rid of that negative habit?
Yeah, this is a common one. People tend to be attached to their phone. You're going to need to, in some cases, leave your phone at home and go outside without it for 4, 5, 6 hours. And you're going to need to do this multiple times in order to train your mind that it's not permanent. This phone is not permanent. And if there's something going on with your family or something like that, you'll find out about it. You'll be able to take care of it. And that's part of letting go of your attachment to them too. So leaving it at home, going outside without it for several hours, and spreading that out, like maybe every 2 or 3 days or every 4 days, you do it that way, where you can be at home with your phone and you can be outside with your phone and be perfectly fine, but you can also be without your phone and you'll be fine in that situation too. So this is what's going to train your mind to let that go, is distance your mind from it. And when you go outside for 4, 5, 6 hours without your phone, when you come home, don't just run to your phone and check your phone right away. Just leave it there for 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. Just leave it there. And now just do all the stuff that you would normally do at home with your family or so forth, or with yourself. And now at some point, go take a look at your phone. And then even when you're at home, you can be training your mind to not have your phone right next to you all the time. You can go put it in another room, and then you can be in a different room and just understand that, hey, this phone is not permanent in my life, because otherwise your mind's going to just continue to stay attached to it. This is a common one, that people are attached to their phones, and this is the way to get rid of it.
Good teacher, David. That's all. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, any other questions here? Anything you guys would like to ask? No? Okay. So I'll just end our class then by thanking all of you guys. Thank you here. Thank you for everyone online who's joining us as well. It's nice to share the teachings of the Buddha with you. It's wonderful that you've decided today is a day that you'd like to learn the teachings of the Buddha. As you guys would like to learn more, there's plenty more for you to learn. You can learn in all of our classes, courses, and retreats, whether you're here in Chiang Mai or you're online. As you see people join us from Facebook, YouTube, Zoom, you can join live, or if you can't join live, you can actually watch the recording. I teach at 9 a.m. here at the temple, and you can see what time zone that is for you based on your local time zone. Or I also teach at 9 p.m. from my house, and I live stream it from there too. So no matter where you are in the world, there should be a live class for you during the day. And then, like I mentioned, if you can't make the live class, there's recordings either on YouTube, Facebook, or on our podcast. So if you'd like to learn more, you're more than welcome to. Next week on Sunday in our group learning program, I'm going to be teaching the 4 stages of enlightenment and the 10 fetters, helping students to understand that once you put together the Eightfold Path and you're practicing that really well, where is your mind headed towards, and what are you going to be experiencing as your mind's experiencing more and more improvement as you're headed towards this enlightened mental state? Because you'll be able to see the indication that your mind's headed towards enlightenment. Enlightenment isn't instantaneous. You're going to see gradual qualities of enlightenment starting to shine through. So knowing what those are can be helpful for you because it can be encouraging and motivating to see that your mind is headed in the right direction. And then on Wednesday, I'm going to be doing meditation with students here, and then I'm going to be opening up to any and all questions that students have. So whatever you choose to do today, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Take care and be well. Sawadee khap. Sawadee khap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.